Todd Payette is a very stubborn man. When he wants to do something like come back, not only in bodybuilding, but in life, he does it, and he doesn't let anybody or anything get in the way. And it's really been a pleasure to know and to be a little part of the life of somebody who's got such a great dedication and comeback.
When you're at the end of the road and there ain't nowhere to go, and the dark creeps in with its evil grin, and you find yourself about to give in. When you feel the pain and there ain't no one to blame.
So much commitment. I've never seen anyone with so much discipline.
You find yourself with no one to care. Just breathe. I know it's a long way home, and every battle you fight alone, it's such a long way home. But at the end of the night, the sun will arise on the wounded warrior.
Here's Jeni Briscoe, owner of this great gym. She's been awesome, welcomed me with open arms, giving me a place to train and to train clients. She is one of the best competitors in Canada, a tremendous professional. It's really an honor to work with her and also to call her a friend. She's tops. She's an absolute class act.
My name is Jeni Briscoe. I own the gym. Well, I've been competing for 21 years, but I've been training for 29. I personally do it because it's me against me, so I like that. I've always been a shy person. I did sports, but I preferred the one-on-one. Every year we try to get better, and it's, it's our own personal goals to get better. I started when I was 26. I'm now older. I get leaner quicker. I know my body better. Muscle maturity. It's the one sport where I think we get better as we get older.
What would you say Todd's chances are to win a national masters title at the age of 52?
I think it's very good.
How tough is it to win a national title?
In Canada, it's very hard. Every year they only give out a couple. So the year that I won, they actually gave out 2 for the whole year.
Describe for the average person what bodybuilding judges look for when deciding who wins.
Depends on what category. Let's say for bodybuilding, they're looking for, I say the X factor, because I'm also a national level judge. So we want the X factor, we want conditioning, full muscle bellies, but lean, but not, well, it depends too. Bodybuilding striated, but say men's classic or female bodybuilding not so striated, so it depends on the class, but it's always that X factor, big shoulders, small waist, quads. Yes, I'll give Todd a big hug when he wins, even though I'm not a hugger. But he deserves one if he wins.
Every time we're in the gym, it's phones off, it's super strict, we're not talking, sitting around and talking or going on our phones. It's strictly straight to business, hard and heavy, intense work.
I think gaining the confidence and being able to use it in everyday life and not just the gym, I really like that aspect of it. You gain so much confidence within yourself. I've noticed it just with like my relationships, my work, and everything. It's hard sometimes, just like how you view yourself, and the whole aspect of not being able to be good enough, or you're thinking you're not ready, that can be really draining.
The analogy I like to use is, I'm like an old car, I run real well, but I gotta warm up first, and sometimes that takes a while. So just keeping covered up keeps the joints and everything warm and helps the blood flow, because it's not like when you're 21 years old, you know, the body's a lot more forgiving. At 52 years of age, I gotta be careful about it. You know, before I'm gonna go into that deep end of the pool, you know, if you're not ready, you're gonna drown.
You know, a good coach tells you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And that's what you need. We go in there and we warm up set after set, strictly business, and then we do 1 to 2 all-out sets. All you have, that's how we like to train. Hard and heavy, very intense.
16. 19, you got it. 20. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25.
Has Todd been helpful to you in the gym? Or has he been this grumpy old man?
I'm an old man hanging on the edge of a cliff by my fingertips.
Yeah, a little bit of both. No, I'm just kidding. No, he's great. He gives really good advice.
He can keep up, that's for sure. It's more of a matter of me keeping up, actually. He's quite the force in the gym. It's nice to have someone to train with that is a lot stronger than you and have a bit of competition.
Come on, big man. Championship reps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, kind of.
Yeah, I call it right.
It's just, yeah, it's 9.
No.
Nice work. See, when people train abs, the misconception is you train abs to get abs, but abs are built in the kitchen. We all have abs. By training abs, it just helps with other exercises. Number 1, gives you that stability for heavier lifts. Number 2, if you actually develop the abs, they will protrude more through the skin as your body fat levels come down. But your body fat, if your diet is not in line, you're gonna have, you could train abs all day and you'll never see them. So it's the old saying, the abs are built in the kitchen. 7, 8, 9, 1 more, up. Up, come on, push, push, push. Dumbbells.
The diet, yes.
It is unbelievably strict.
Because you have to meal prep, you have to be ready, you always have to be prepared, because if you're not, then that just sets you up for failure.
You know, like a lot of people in the mid to late 80s, I was aware of Arnold. I knew who he was. I knew he was a bodybuilder, and I'd seen him in Conan and Terminator and that sort of thing. But it really wasn't until I saw a book of his that he had written called Education of a Bodybuilder that a friend of mine had. And it was just sitting there, and I picked it up and I started leafing through it, and there were these really great pictures of him, and he had just this heroic quality about his physique. Like, he really looked like what you would envision a Greek god from mythology to look like. You know, just impressive with fantastic proportion. And I'd always been enamored with superheroes and strength, and as I was coming to the end of my high school athletic career, it had dawned on me, oh yeah, when I was a kid, this was what I wanted to do. And so I asked my friend Scott if I could borrow the book, and I quickly read through that thing. And what really impressed me even more than his physique was his mental approach to things. You know, he was from this little tiny village in the middle of Austria, and, you know, was inspired by another bodybuilder, Reg Park, who was a multi-Mr. Universe winner, and went on to star in many Hercules films. And Arnold saw Reg on the cover of a magazine and said, that's what I want to do. I want to be like Reg Park. And just like he wanted to be like Reg, I wanted to be like him, because I identified with the fact that people were telling him he couldn't do it. You know, he was a 15-year-old kid. His dad was the chief of police, very strict. And he says, I want to go to America. I want to become the best built man in the world. I want to win Mr. Universe, and then I'm going to star in movies. And of course, people looked at him like, you don't speak English, you have a ridiculous name, and you're a skinny 15-year-old kid. But he was so determined. He had this tunnel vision, and he wasn't afraid to put in the work. It wasn't like he just spoke the words and then hoped it would happen. He learned, he ate, he grew, he trained. And everything that he said he was going to do, he did. And what I really, really identified with is I came from my little neighborhood, and from a pretty young age, people had been telling me what I could not do. And it didn't matter in what venue that was. You know, when I was playing high school basketball, I wanted to be able to dunk a basketball. Well, I'm not that tall for basketball, you know, a little under 6 foot. That's a big jump. And people say, you never dunk. And I worked on my legs, and I worked on my vertical until I could do it. And I realized, you know, if you're willing to do the work, there's nothing that can stop you.
How long have you and Todd been together?
We've been together 1.5 years.
When Todd told you his story, what did you think?
He was so honest and upfront that it just showed integrity of character to me.
You and Todd live in Fort St. John, British Columbia, and will be traveling to Winnipeg as we work on this documentary. So how do you think Todd feels about returning to his childhood home in Winnipeg?
He's pretty nervous.
Yeah, it's been quite a long time, right?
Many years, and I don't think he left on the best of terms, so it doesn't have a positive feeling to go home right now.
If Todd should win, what would that mean to him and to you?
It would be a very big deal to both of us. I'd be so proud of him if he wins. And for him, it's just such a huge personal accomplishment.
In bodybuilding, the posing routine is really your only opportunity to stand on the stage by yourself and show your body to its best advantage. You get to select the music that you pose to, and you get to select how you display your physique and the poses you choose. You could have the best body in the world, but if you can't display it properly, it's really not going to matter. It is, for lack of a better term, like being a moving sculpture, a work of art. You want to convince the audience and the judging panel that on this day, you are the best. It's not unlike dance. It is bodybuilding as art.
It's funny when you come back, how everything looks so much smaller, insignificant really. I mean, this is just a garage like a million other garages. But my dad, when he would drink, sometimes he wouldn't come home. And the way I would know if he was home, in the morning I would get up and I'd come to this garage. My mom didn't drive, so if the car was here, Dad was here. And if Dad was here, my life made sense. I mean, he didn't deserve it, but he was like, you know, he was my hero. When you're 5 years old, your dad is like Superman. My dad was a milkman. He literally delivered milk. And I just thought that was so impressive. You know, the uniform and the hat, big truck. Sometimes he'd take me in the truck, or he took me to work a couple times. I remember the coolers. I remember the smell of all the milk and the dairy products. And it was a Sunday, and a Sunday in May. And just like any other day, I got up and I wanted to see if he had come home. You know, I started walking towards the garage, but I could hear the car running, and that wasn't normal. And that's where I found him. I walked in there and he slumped over, car running, all the doors shut, except for his door was open. And I went in and I crawled on his lap. He was dead, but I didn't know it. I spent the next several minutes trying to wake him up, shaking him, yelling at him. I turned the car off because I was starting to feel sick, I remember, from the fumes. I'd seen him do it a million times, so I knew how to turn the car off. That was the last time I saw him. I went into the house and told my mom, Dad's in the garage. He's asleep, he won't get up. And then all hell broke loose. I wouldn't be the same ever again. Nothing would ever be the same ever again. And that's the way it was. You know, it's funny, the things that are lost on you as a kid. And here he is, there's my dad. And if I look just a little over there, there's my house. I mean, it's right there. You know. And you know, it was the 70s, nobody really talked about nothing. I mean, I see him, and he's there. The next day I'm in school like nothing happened. And a few days after that, I'm standing here. Like, how do you process that? You know, nobody explained shit to me. Nobody said nothing. It was just, he's gone. How do you even understand death at that age? Here's your dad, you love him. Now he's in the ground here. And there he is. And there's his birthday, November 29th. Same as me, I was born on his birthday. Happy birthday. And, you know, I spent too much time as a kid in a graveyard. I mean, we'd play in here. Like, that's not right. You know, sometimes instead of going home after school, I'd just come here. I'd just come here and I'd sit and I'd talk to him. You know, I tell a story about when he was still alive. He'd come home drunk a lot, and a lot of the time I'd wake up and I'd always say to him, Dad, I'm hungry. It didn't matter how drunk he wasn't a violent man. He'd say, come on. He'd take me in the kitchen and I'd have a choice. I could have a bowl of cereal or milk and cookies. And then one day he's gone. You know, he wasn't that far, he was right here. And I got in my head, well, maybe if I have the cereal, maybe if I have the cookies, he'll come back. And I remember sitting at that table, milk all over the place, because he'd usually make it for me. I couldn't barely lift the damn bottle. Milk all over the place, all over the table, and sitting there eating this cereal and crying. Just saying, just come back. He never came back. But I'd always come here, you know, when I was scared, or I remember I was going to get in a fight one day, and it's funny because back then when you were a kid, it was like a preordained event sometimes. And I knew the next day I was getting in a fight with this kid named Danny, and I was scared. And I just came here and I talked to him. I said, I got to get into a fight. Can you help me? And you know, I got in that fight and I was so mad. I wasn't even mad at the kid, I was mad at him. Beat the shit out of that poor kid. But you know, if he'd have lived, I'd have just been him. I'd have just been a drunk. Because when he'd drink and he's at home, my job was to bring him his beer. And every beer I brought him, I'd always take a sip. He knew I took a sip. I mean, he drank with his brothers, he drank with his dad, the whole family drank. And I think he probably pictured one day we'd sit and drink. You know, so sometimes by the time I got to bed, you're 5 years old, doesn't take too many sips of beer and you're pretty buzzed. I would have been just like him. And you know, he was gone and I hated him. You bastard. he left me, you know, hated him. All the other kids, you know, they all had dads, they all did shit. I didn't have that, and I was mad. I was so mad. And then one day I thought, you know, had he lived, I'd have been him. So I made peace because I thought, you know, maybe he had to go. He had to go so I wouldn't be him. So I would be more than a drunk. And I've sure messed up a lot of my life. I sure made just about every mistake you can make. But eventually I forgave him. Because he made that sacrifice. And maybe it wasn't an honorable thing, but if he had been around, it wouldn't have been good. So I told myself, you know, one day if I ever win that Mr. Canada or win the Mr. Universe, I bring that trophy back here. I put it right down there. And I'd say thank you. I love you, Pop. Really do.
Please introduce yourself.
I am Naomi Green.
All right. And how long have you known Todd?
Egad, that dates me.
It dates me too, yeah. It dates us both. We're both old.
1988. 87, 88.
80, yeah.
Somewhere
about
in
that.
there.
So you knew him back in his high school years.
Yeah.
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 Yes.
High school.
High school.
High school.
We were in high school.
He didn't like his high school, so he came to our high school to hang out.
I
But he
got
didn't
it.
go to any of the classes.
No, I just went to the gym and
Yeah.
played basketball, so that was good enough. It had basketball there. It was good enough for me.
Well, what was he like as a kid?
How honest do you want me?
I want you to be honest, because you know why? Because I'm not that kid anymore.
No, he was, you know, the athletic type, kind of macho and jokester and funny and like, having fun and, you know, thought he was all that in a bag of chips.
I was a pretty big deal in my brain. Only in mine, though. But my mom was raising, you know, 3 children on a waitress wage, and I am not listening to anything she has to say. I'm not going to school, I'm cutting class, I'm only there to play basketball and talk to girls. And so she's getting phone calls and this and that, and I'm at an age, I'm 16, she can't physically control me. I'm gonna do whatever I want. Her doctor said, she was saying I'm stressed. I'm like, I can't deal with this kid anymore. And he said to her, how old is he? And she said, 16. He said, legally you can ask him to go. So she did. And she gave me some money to start out, which is great, but it doesn't go that far, and I didn't have the life skills or anything. It was like, here you are, out in the world. I had a gym bag full of my clothes and my basketball shoes, and hit the road running, and I just kind of bounced around, stayed with, friends, sleeping on couches, and Rob's parents had let me stay there a little bit, taking showers sometimes at the high school gym, a couple times, here and there. And it's like, well, where can I sleep tonight? And if I didn't find a place, you just sleep wherever.
He was a pretty good athlete. He wasn't really tall, he wasn't really fast, so but he was very coachable. So, and that was one of the things I enjoyed most, because as a player myself, I was neither fast nor a really good athlete, but I thought I became a pretty good player because I used my head. And Todd was someone who was very cerebral about the game. He wanted to know stuff, and that was great.
Explain to us what shoulder down means.
Yeah, it's just leverage, right? So it's like when you get to a situation like where you have the defender, like where you're partly past the defender, then by dropping your shoulder, you're preventing him from getting back into defensive position. So you're sort of gaining your line right to the basket that way. And the thing was, it worked right away. Like when Todd did it, he immediately, I think that's one of the reasons it resonated so much was, that doesn't usually happen as a coach, usually it takes lots of repetitions. This one worked the first time, and I didn't remember it was Steven he did it to, but that would have been very cool because Steven was pretty cocky, and it would have served Todd well.
In other words, stay on the offensive, which Todd was able to do.
Yeah, but it's also persistence, I think. It was just keeping the shoulder down, sort of like a metaphor. That's certainly how I read it in the book. It wasn't exactly a literal metaphor for basketball. I think the fact that he associated it with immediate success, I think that's why the words resonated, and then he interpreted them in his own way.
In the book, when it describes all the obstacles that Todd had to get through, it was shoulder down that seemed to be the pressing theme, that, hey, I've got to beat this Goliath. I've got to get through it.
Right, yeah. And I'd like to think that I know, like Ken and Orton and I were the basketball threesome that worked at Elmwood at the time, and we were drawn so closely to the guys we worked with there because many of them came from broken families, and basketball was a real positive influence in their life. Many of them couldn't afford to play hockey, so basketball was the sport they took to, and so that's why we had those camps that Todd mentions, where we, when he was still in grade 6, we were running camps to get kids fired up even before they got to the school. Yeah, I just amazed at how many obstacles stood in Todd's way throughout his life and how he's persevered. Actually, my dream, my hope right now is to get his book into the hands of students in the classrooms I work in, or at least somehow to get his story across to them, because his story is an inspiration, and I hope that it can extend and help other people in his situation, not necessarily bodybuilding or any of that, but just that whole idea that keep the shoulder down and keep pushing.
Every day he inspires me to just be a better person, because he tries to be the best that he can be every day.
Well, in 2009 and 10, I was competing in the Masters category, and I was, just turned Master. I was in my early 40s, and I really badly wanted to win that heavyweight championship. It's kind of a, in bodybuilding, you want to win, at the higher levels, and so I was fighting really hard to do that, and I was fighting so hard to do it that I was really, pushing all other aspects of my life to the side. And in 2009, I had cracked the top 3 the first time in a very tough show, and I thought, okay, top 3, that means I got a shot. The next year came, you tried even harder, but the same fellow again was actually second, and I was once again third, and this new fellow had come out of the woodwork to win it. So 2011 had come around, and I was pushing real hard to the point of was spiraling down in every aspect of my life and didn't care about anything else, and was trying so hard to win that heavyweight championship that all the things that ethically meant something to me got pushed aside. So I was getting ready for a national competition, and I was going through an intersection in downtown Winnipeg, and this great big cargo van ran a red light and crushed my car. And I remember I kind of was stunned for a moment after the car came to a stop, and I'm sitting there and I'm like bewildered. What just hit me? And I'm like, I go to open the door won't open. Car starts filling with smoke. And now I'm scared, and I could feel this pain, in my neck, in my head, my shoulder. And I'm like, no, I'm not going out like this. And I grabbed the handle and I reefed on that door and I pounded. My shoulder was messed up, but I didn't care. And I pounded on the door till I got out. Got out of the vehicle. I looked back at it. I'm like, and that car was like my jewel, and it's like an accordion done. And I'm like, oh, somebody's gonna pay. And I look and I see the van that hit me, and I started like a Terminator walking towards it. Here I come. Yeah, you're gonna pay. And then I just went, ew, and I was out. And I woke up in someone's vehicle. A couple people had scooped me up. Next thing I know, I'm strapped down to a board in an ambulance. They're talking to me and they're trying to keep me conscious. They're asking me questions. Oh, you work out? Yeah, I'm competing at nationals in like a week and a half. They go, oh, is that right? I go, yeah. And they're like, well, let's just get you looked at and make sure you're okay. Yep, you know. They bring me to the hospital and I'm all strapped down and they have a neck brace on me and all this and that. And I'm waiting and waiting. And I remember it's like, I have to go to the bathroom. This is not good, right? And then finally I'm like, well, I'm going. They have one of them little bottles there. So I get up and I'm relieving myself and a nurse comes in the room and she screams at me, what are you doing? And I'm thinking, I think it's pretty obvious what I'm doing. I gotta go. Well, you can't. And I go, well, apparently I can. And she goes, you need to lie down right now. So I finish up and I lie down and she goes, you do not move. And I'm like, whatever, right? I'm pretty full of myself. And she leaves and they're doing all this stuff and they're like, we're taking you for some x-rays. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And I can tell I'm in pain and I know I'm not doing great. But I'm like, I'm all right. This is no big thing. And then they bring me back into a room and a doctor comes in and he says to me, I'm going to give you some very clear instructions, Mr. Payette. I want you to listen. We're going to take that neck brace off and we're going to put this one on. This one's a little heavier duty. Now you do not move. Do not try and help us. Just let us put this on you. You understand? I'm like, okay. And I remember I had gotten in touch with one of my cousins from my dad's side, actually, that I'd reconnected with, and said, I'm in the hospital. I might need a ride or something. You think you can? And she came down, and so she's there. And they put this brace on, and the doctor says, okay, Mr. Payette, we've done some tests, and he says, I hate to tell you this, but your neck is broken. And I'm like, what? He says, your neck is broken and we need you not to move because if you move, you might not walk anymore. And now all of a sudden, any thoughts of competing are all of a sudden not such a big deal. And my cousin grabs my hand and I can hear her and she's upset. And I just feel one tear. It was a good moment, man. You should have the camera there. It was beautiful. One tear just going down the side of my face and I'm like, trying to hold my crap together. And they go, we gotta do some more scans. We gotta see how bad the break is. We gotta see what we gotta do. All this stuff, and a million thoughts are running through my head. Like, wow, I am gonna end up a cripple. And they come back a little while later and they go, we got some good news. Don't move, but we got some good news. It's not broken. There's an abnormality and you've been hurt, but it's not broken. I go, oh, awesome. So I can compete at nationals. What? I'm competing at nationals in bodybuilding in like 10 days. No, you're not. Yeah, I am. No, you're not. And I said, sir, if I get out of here under my own power and I walk, I promise you I will be on that stage in 10 days. Oh, ego's a wonderful thing. So I'm released, bunch of pain meds, the whole bit, and I'm driving. And all of a sudden I wake up and I bounced the car off the center median, the rental car I had. I'm like, what the hell was that? I must be tired, right? And then more and more often I'm finding myself, I could be sitting, I could be doing something, whatever, and all of a sudden I'm unconscious. No warning, out. And I'm like, well, this isn't good. Then it got better. I would pass out and I'd wake up and I'd be paralyzed. And I couldn't move. I could look, I could talk, I could hear, but I couldn't move a thing. And that would go on sometimes 20 seconds, sometimes a few minutes. But it was at that point I thought, maybe I should go get my head scanned. And so I get my head scanned, and they do some preliminary tests, and they said it looks like, and from the sounds of what you have, it sounds like you have a narcolepsy, which is basically a type of epilepsy that causes one to fall asleep or pass out without notice. And sometimes things like this can be brought on by head trauma, which you experienced in the car accident. So you can't drive anymore. We're not going to pull your license, because if we do that, it's really hard to get it back, but you have to promise us not to drive. So I was like, that's fine, I won't drive. And I said, well, what about this competition? And they're like, that's a real bad idea. And I said, well, why? And they said, well, you could pass out, and stress and strain might make that happen. So I went to nationals, and I remember one incident. I'm sitting at the athletes meeting, getting ready to go weigh in, and I pass out. I'm sitting there, and I wake up, and I'm completely paralyzed. And there's a pro bodybuilder that I knew. She's sitting beside me, and she goes, "Are you all right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she goes, "You don't look so good." "Oh, you know how prep is. I'm just depleted. I need some water." She goes, "Yeah, you look kind of funny." "Yeah, you know, I'm all right." And in my head, I'm thinking, please, God, don't let them call my class now, because I cannot get up and walk to the podium. And slowly but surely, I felt everything come back, and I was like, oh. And sure enough, you know, I got through it, and I ended up placing third in the country, and was kind of amazed at myself, because I knew deep down how bad it was. It wasn't great. And I remember Gary Bartlett from Muscle Magazine even wrote an article on it. Took the picture of the crushed car, put it in there, and then a picture of me on stage, ta-da! You know, and saying what I had to overcome to be there. I decided that it would be a really good idea to become connected with a bunch of fellows that were, for lack of a better term, in organized crime. I was training these guys, was hanging out with these guys. And, you know, people have asked me about it many times, and I said, you know what, if you roll around in crap long enough, you're going to smell. And, you know, they had asked me to do some favors for them. They'd actually asked me to do a lot of stuff. And, you know, they liked that I was a big, strong guy. And they said, hey, you know, you make some money, and, you know, sometimes people owe us money, and we could send you to go get it. And I was like, nah, I don't think so. But one of the guys had asked me to deliver a package for him, and I did, and I didn't think nothing of it. And it turned out to be, about $50,000 worth of meth. So, you know, you know, there were people in my life that tried to absolve me of it, in the sense that, well, you didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know, I didn't ask, right? So it's not their fault. You know, I had an idea it wasn't, as the one cop said, he said to me, I said, what did he say? I bet it's not a cookie dough. Yeah, I bet it's not cookie dough. Yeah. I bet it's not cookie dough. And I was like, you're right, it's not cookie dough. You know, and one of the fellas that was with that group of guys was an informant, because he knew he was going to go down. And so he said, hey, there's this guy, he's delivering this package, here's his name, here's what, they had complete and total files on me, had me under surveillance, everything else. So they knew, and so they, you know, stopped me, and, you know, they asked me what's in the package, and I said, you know, to be honest with you, I really don't know. And then that's when the cop said, yeah, well, I bet it ain't cookie dough. And I laughed, and I said, you know what, you're right, I bet it ain't. You know, so from there, it was a number of years before I actually saw my day in court, after going to prison, being released from prison, and then fighting it through the court system. And then that day arrived, and that's when Neoma was there for me. And she never judged, you know, because I would unload, because, you know, a lot of people, you know, but she was just always a good friend. Like, she would hear me out and give the best advice she could, and she was patient. You know, and it's hard to be patient when you're watching somebody self-destruct.
It was, because over that over the time of us talking and, you know, hearing his story and more about his life and what he had all been through, you know, that affects a person, what happened in his childhood and stuff. And I could tell by how he was talking and what his heart was like that what they were accusing him of is not Todd. That's not who Todd is. It was a bad choice. Otherwise, he's generous, he's caring, he's giving, he like helping people. He loves to help people, and that just came through over and over again. And I wanted to see him get that opportunity and not suffer the ultimate punishment of how bad it could have been.
Yeah, I was looking at 7 years in prison.
Yeah.
You know, my life effectively would have ended on many levels. And I remember they gave me a chance to address the court right before the end. And I thought, well, here's where I make or break it. Because the hard thing is you're sitting there while the prosecuting attorney doing their job. You know, I don't blame the girl or the lady that was doing it, but she's, you know, attacking your character. And so they gave me a chance to address the court. And I remember at one point, and I'd been convicted. She said, I think at that point, or it was right before. Yeah, it was right before they had the verdict, but she said you could address the court. And it was before she passed the sentence. And so I was telling her about the strides I'd made in my life to fix my life, to rebuild my life. I'd opened my little gym. I'd moved on. And I said to her at one point, I said, you know, I'm not a criminal. And the judge looked right at me and she says, yes, you are. And I said, you're right. Excuse me, I am. And I'm accountable for that. And I sort of continued. And then she read the verdict, which she had decided, and I found out later that in this type of case, this had never happened before. She had decided, remember, it was house arrest. Yeah. 2 years less 1 day, and I had to speak to youth groups and be in the community and do some things that were positive. And I had found out, like I said, after they said that never, with the amount of drugs you had and what you did and what you were convicted of, you should have done at least 5 years. So much so that I found out after the fact from my lawyer that the prosecuting attorney had challenged the verdict after. So here I thought, well, I'm not going to jail. And then a few weeks later, my lawyer got in touch with me. She said, I didn't want to tell you at the time because I didn't want to stress you out, but they actually challenged it, and the judge upheld her ruling. And the reason they challenged it is because they had never, ever not put somebody in jail for doing what you did. You're the only one. And she really believed in you, you know, and I was like, whew, you know, it was the biggest relief in the world. And I remember when she said, you know, you're not going to prison, we're giving you this. Oh, I was so thankful. I mean, it's like you get your life back. And I just remember completely just breaking down 100% at that point.
Well, and what
said
you
it was like a miracle. Todd had said you guys prayed before that.
Oh yeah.
Remember?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. Did we ever?
All about praying.
Oh, it was absolutely. You know, it's funny because you see in movies and TV, and often when people, oh God, I'm so sorry. But the truth of the matter was I was really asking. You know, I'd spent years scratching, fighting, clawing to redeem myself, not just to people who knew me or the public, but for myself personally. Because the hardest thing through everything, people are going to screw up. That happens. But being accountable for screwing up, that's brutal. Like, that's hard. That's basically saying, nobody made me screw up. Life didn't make me screw up. I made these absolutely horrible decisions. And so every day I had to look in the mirror at that guy and go, oh man, what an idiot. And so you have to find a way to process that and just say, well, I'm going to put my shoulder down and I'm going to move forward anyway, no matter what. And a lot of the time, a day would happen where I wanted not to get out of bed. I just want to stay in bed and hide from the world. And I would force myself to move, you know, and it would be like, go down to the gym, go down to your gym and just lift something. And it would slowly bring me out of it. But, you know, owning that was, you know, over that period, especially because, you know, if you make a mistake in life, which we all do, most people often don't know about what you did, right? You did something stupid, you said something dumb, maybe you stole something, nobody knows, whatever you did. But what I did was put in the newspapers, because you know, like anything, the bodybuilder, blah, 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 you know, it's a headline, right? Bodybuilding champion convicted of, you know, transporting X amount of dollars worth of meth. Well, I mean, and now I'm banned from competing, so the one thing that was my identity and who I was, that's gone. People now view me as a criminal, as somebody who's affiliated with known criminals. And there were a lot of people that were more than happy to, you know, jump on that bandwagon. And I saw a lot of people in my life literally turn their back to me. You'd think that jail was the low point, but that actually really wasn't. That day was the low point, because I got there, all my stuff's gone, because, you know, my girlfriend, I told her I'd just sell everything, right? And she did, and you know, because of other things, horrible things I'd done, she's gone. I'm there. My rent is paid up, I think, till the end of the month. I have no power. I have running cold water, and I have no food, no money, no anything. And it was like, the only pain I could compare it to is when my dad died and I found him. It was like this stabbing, harsh pain in my gut, and I was so done, you know. I remember walking around and just, you know, tears streaming down my face and howling like an animal that's hurt. And, you know, I was like, I don't know what to do. And I'm looking to see what I have, and I have nothing. And, you know, I happened to notice that there were these pain meds sitting there. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. That's the answer right there. And so I sort of just made peace with everything, and boy, was I shocked as hell the next day when I woke up, because that wasn't part of the plan at all, you know? And it was kind of like, whoa, and then you're hungover from the pain meds. But, you know, it was kind of like, again, God giving me like, yeah, idiot, get up, okay? You're here, you're still here, okay? Your pity party done now? Are you done? Feeling sorry for yourself? Okay, let's go. And that's kind of what I thought, well, you know, okay, I tried, right? I tried to give up. I literally tried to give up. And I've never been good at giving up. You know, I may be a goof in a lot of ways and make a lot of mistakes, but I've always had this little, I don't quit, I don't quit, I don't quit. And then I tried to quit, well, you can't. So it was like, okay, you go to the gym, because it's the only place that makes sense. And that's what I did, right? Black and white world there, 200 pounds is 200 pounds, and you can either lift it or you can't. I was like, straight face, straight face, straight face.
Great guy. Drawing, incredible. Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, I should say Spider-Man. Incredible artist. The guy is gifted beyond belief. He has been famous for this throughout his whole life. There's been nobody in Elmwood that I've ever met, no one from any community nearby, that can draw like this man right here.
I haven't done it in years.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. How he does it is amazing. His arms are almost as big as mine.
Almost.
No, I'm talking about the guy in the drawing.
Yeah. When I train, I picture looking like Jamie Zalatan. Like, man, if only I looked like Jamie, that'd win the
My
Mr.
brother
Universe.
says to say hi.
Oh,
Here, I'll
man.
show you a picture of him.
Well, I finished the book last week and I cried. It meant a lot to me. I'm very passionate about coaching and teaching, and the thing about Elmwood was that was, of all the schools I taught at, because I ended up moving into, I'd say, more affluent areas later in my career, being needed and being important to kids was so important to me and some of my colleagues like Ken and Orton Harrison, another guy I coached with. And so knowing that I had any impact on someone like Todd in his life means the world to me.
It is never too late to rebuild your life. Your life starts today. Whatever point you're at in your life, it starts again today, each day. And it really is important if you, as they say, get out of your head and get into your goals. You can do it. You can make tremendous strides. And I'm thrilled that Todd has put his whole story, which has many ups and downs, out there for people to understand, because I think it's a very inspirational story of his life. When I was first trying to do my part to help as he was feeling really low and down, I knew he could do a lot better, but he's already climbed to heights that I didn't dream of at that point, like the universe and now the Canadian national competition. So it's really been a pleasure and to know and to be a little part of the life of somebody who's got such a great dedication and comeback.
I'll tell you, once I got out of prison and began fighting my way back and trying to rebuild my life, I never really thought that there would be any opportunity for me to get back and compete for that particular title again. They had banned me from competing and had, absolutely no sign of letting me ever compete again. Like they, I asked nicely, I asked not nicely, I went to the press, I did everything. But really, it was good that they didn't let me compete, because I needed to learn a lesson, and what that lesson was, because I thought, well, okay, yes, I was arrested, but what does that have to do with this competition, right? They're not a court of law. How many athletes get arrested for things and they're still allowed to compete in their chosen sport? So I was looking at it in the worst possible way, because I wasn't being accountable. Once I realized, okay, idiot, if you wouldn't have done what you did, you wouldn't have been arrested. And if you wouldn't have been arrested, you wouldn't have been banned from competing. But you made those choices, so, the consequence might very well be you don't ever get to do this again, and you get to live with that. And once I realized that, it was like a weight being lifted off my shoulder, and things started to change, and I gradually got the opportunity to start competing again. Getting ready for a bodybuilding show it's like being your own science experiment. You're doing stuff to your own physiology, so you watch your body change. Especially in the last couple of weeks, you see things show up that weren't there a few days ago. So now there's veins and muscularity showing up now. It wasn't there 4 or 5 days ago. It just comes and just better and better and better and leaner and leaner and leaner. It's, you're looking, wow, that's new. Look at that, that's new. And then you think, but how much more can I do? How much farther can I push it? It can be better yet. There's always, no matter how good you get, you're always kind of thinking, bet it could be a little bit better. Just a little bit. I cut the weight down to about half and just rep out, flood the muscle, which we're working the deltoid, with as much blood as possible. in a way, even though it's lighter, it's way worse. It's like prolonged agony. I guess I better lift it. You're gonna look pretty funny. Put the weight on there. Oh, not moving. Oh, it's definitely not light. Oh, yeah. That's definitely not light. You gotta be able to hit your poses properly without shaking and cramping. But when we look in the mirror when we pose, we're looking for what needs work. Where do we gotta take more fat off? What muscle do we gotta build more? Just like a runner has a stopwatch to gauge their time. What we do, we have the mirror. So it's the opposite of what people think. People think we're looking and going, oh, look at me, I look fantastic. We're not, we're looking and going, man, I need more rear delt. I gotta cut my carbs down, I'm carrying a little too much fat. It's a real mental game.
This event is a professional qualifier at the Canadian national level. And so people end up being able to qualify for IFBB Pro, Mr. Olympia status or competition, and they get to place as national amateur athletic champions.
I absolutely hope he wins, just so I can cheer him on from the sides and watch the whole thing unfold. I think it would be amazing. But just his day-to-day life, everything he's accomplished is already a win.
Well, it's been a long 10 years. Actually 11 years since I stood on this stage at a national championship, that is. And here I was, the final four. Before I went on stage, I was thinking, this is pretty good. This is awesome. Top four. Maybe I'm fourth or third or even second. That'd be great. After all, third was the best I'd ever placed. And then I started to get a little bit upset with that because I thought, no, fourth isn't good, third, second, no, not this time. It's been 10 years, 11 years. Today I'm winning. No disrespect to the other guys, they all look great. In fact, they look so good, that's why I was thinking, top 3, top 4, that's pretty good. But all that time in the gym, all those years of pain, sweat, anger, no, it was going to be different this time. And I started thinking of a lot of things while I was up there. Not just hitting my poses and not just about some of the cramping that was starting. I started thinking about my dad. I started thinking about all those times that I was angry and hurting and all the mistakes I made. And I started to think, not many people get a second chance. This really was my redemption. This was it. This was my shot. And I knew that at least for myself, that if I could win here, I'd be able to prove to not only myself, but to many other people that I wasn't just that bum from the neighborhood, that kid, that dropout, that homeless guy, that ex-con, the criminal, the bad guy. This meant something. This was more than just a bodybuilding contest for me. Not just for myself, but I wanted to show to other people that, you know what? You can get knocked down. You can be beat up. You can make horrible choices in life, but you can come back. If you're willing to put in the work, if you are willing to own your mistakes and be accountable and blame nobody else, look in the mirror every day and say, yeah, I did that, but I can be better than that. And I can move forward. I can put my shoulder down and I can get through anything because I can. I've been doing it over and over. So when you're the last man standing on that stage, 4th place is announced, 3rd place, then there's just 2 of you. And then you know. And I knew. Today was my day. Today I'm the champion. And all the pain and all the hurt didn't matter anymore. And I knew this, that if I could do it, absolutely you can do it. Absolutely you can do it. Never quit. Never give up. Put your shoulder down and move forward through that obstacle.
Hi guys. This is all right there. It's all right. Where's my cookies?
I didn't bring cookies.
That was a hard show. That was some really, really, really good guys. And it was a pretty damn good feeling when they announce your name as the winner. You know, you work and you picture it so many times, and you think, man, it'd be good to win. And then you get to the show and you look around and you go, holy crap, look at all these guys, they're all fantastic. And then when they tell you you're the best of them, just for it's just a big deal to me personally. You know, feels pretty damn good. I don't know what'll be better, this or the pizza that I'm gonna have later, but it'll be close.
Todd had a lot of popular response from the audience from when he went out there, and I thought he had one of the larger applauses and hoots and hollerings and everything while he was posing. He placed first in the Masters heavyweight competition and did well right up through. So, you know, I think, you know, he fared very well today. Todd Payette is a very stubborn man. When he wants to do something like come back, not only in bodybuilding, but in life, he does it, and he doesn't let anybody or anything get in the way.
Can you explain for us about the category you won?
Well, the Masters 40 plus category is very, very tough class because you have the true, you know, veterans competing, guys that have, you know, these are not new guys. These are guys that have generally been doing this 20 years or so. And, you know, for bodybuilding, a lot of guys hit their stride in their 40s. So it's funny to come back and win that category in my 50s. That doesn't happen very often. You know, to come back and be competing against guys that are, you know, can be several years younger than you, up to, for me, over a decade younger. I mean, by that point in someone's career, they know how to get in shape. They've built lots of muscle. They know how to pose. You know, you're not just beating guys that are kind of new and thought, hey, I'm going to enter a bodybuilding show. So it's a tough, tough class. And of course, just like a lot of sports, heavyweight is a tough class. You know, it's not an easy class to be going into. Generally, to turn professional, you have to win an overall title, which is even harder. And I came within really a hair of that today. And I'm okay with that because, you know, although a lot of us always think, oh, we want to win a, you know, this pro status title. My goal was really, I wanted to win that heavyweight championship because it's what my goal was originally, was to win that. So
that actually is very fitting for Road to Redemption.
Absolutely. It's like literally going in the exact same category, the same class, that's fighting for that same championship that had eluded me, over 10 years ago, and was really a part of my downfall. But you want to walk away knowing you did everything you can. I mean, my whole message was showing what you can overcome, right? And obviously this could have went one of two ways. I mean, this could have been, you were third or fifth or whatever, and we talk about the journey, because that's valid. But it sure makes a nice story to be able to say, and knowing that this is being captured for a film, but to be able to say, yeah, this show, this one, this title that I could not get when I was in my prime, after everything, all the crap, wading through that swamp, to come out triumphant is a nice, personal feeling for myself. And then I think this is going to speak to people, because if I can do it, I'm some schmuck from Elmwood and Winnipeg. If I can do it, you sure as hell can do it.
When you're at the end of the road and there ain't nowhere to go, and the dark creeps in with its evil grin, and you find yourself about to give in. When you feel the pain and there ain't no one to blame, and you wallow there in that deep despair, and you find yourself with no one to care. Just breathe. I know it's a long way home, and every battle you fight alone, it's such a long